Hello again everyone and welcome to this wrap of round 16 for the 2025 AFL season. Ben, thank you as always for having me on. Let's get straight into the footy on Thursday night. The opening game of round 16 on the Thursday night was played at the Adelaide Oval between Port Adelaide and Carlton. Now, this is a game both teams have come in under a lot of pressure about their coaching situations and how they've been handling the coaching management and upper management throughout the early part of the year. As we move into the final third, those questions are ramping up as we go week to week. So big game for both coaches to get the win and silence the critics in this one. But it was all Port Adelaide from the very, very beginning. 5-goal quarter to start the game for the Power. Blues only mustering 3 points in the first quarter. Much of the same in the second. 3 goals for the Power, 1 goal for the Blues. Then a little bit of a comeback from the Blues in the second half. 5 goals in the third from Port Adelaide and 3 goals from Carlton. And then 3 goals in the last for Port Adelaide and 4 goals from Carlton to finish that game, closing to 50 points after a really, really disappointing first half and a really, really dismal performance from the Blues in the first half. So more pressure put on the Carlton backroom there, especially on Michael Voss. A lot of questions over his coaching future after this game. We know no matter what happens at Port Adelaide, Ken Hinkley is done after the end of this year, whether they play finals or not. We wait to see, but whenever their final siren goes, he will be removed as the coach of Port Adelaide and they will bring in Josh Carr for 2026. So a big win here for the Power to get the round started on the Thursday night. We'll go to my player of the game for this game, and it will be Connor Rose of Port Adelaide. 120 AFL fantasy, 30 touches, 25 kicks, 5 handballs, 11 marks, and 1 tackle for Rose in this one. So well played to him, well played to the Power. Carlton move on to next week, see if they can answer the question. We head straight over to the game that was on the Friday night between the Sydney Swans and the Western Bulldogs at the SCG. And Sydney, a team who have been a little lost this year, a little shaky. They had a shaky start to the year. They've had a bit of a recovery, but still not a team who are looking at contending come finals time this year, because they are still in a bunch of teams who have 6 wins on the board and they are 3 games outside of the top 8 with 8 in hand. So we don't expect to see Sydney in the mix at that point. We go into the Western Bulldogs currently sitting in 7th. Finals is definitely something on the cards for them. I think we've got a genuine top 9 now, so it will be one of those teams in the top 8 who do finish 9th and miss out on the finals come end of the final round. But Doggies currently sitting 7th with the win in this game against a very, very determined Sydney side. So final scores in this game were Sydney 14-12-96. Western Bulldogs 16-9, 105. So Western Bulldogs hanging on, tough game throughout. Doggies, every time they built a lead, Sydney would close, and I think that just told the story of this game was that the Doggies were the team pushing the pace in the game, and Sydney clawing back over and over again. Just unfortunately in the end they're just not able to get over the line in the end against the pressure of the Doggies. We'll go to my player of the game, and when you're kicking efficiently at 16-9, you're going to have players in the goal scoring department do well. So this week I want to go with Joel Frazier. 116 AFL fantasy and 4 goals, 23 disposals, 12 kicks, 11 handballs, 7 marks and 3 tackles for the young fella from Western Bulldogs. Now we jump straight into the Saturday games. We start with Gold Coast versus Melbourne, and this was a game where Gold Coast really needed to win to keep their finals, well, not their finals hopes alive, but keep their hopes of controlling their destiny in terms of getting the positioning that they want to manufacture the draw that they want in September. Melbourne really just trying to close a gap that is now 3 games to the top 8 for the teams outside of the 9th spot and below. So 10 and below, 3, 4, 2 or 3 games behind at the moment, but we don't worry about that at this point. Gold Coast, very, very strong start as well. Held Melbourne to 1 point in the first, kicking 5-7 themselves, so much like last week, very, very strong start this week. They do manage to hold it off. Melbourne come back throughout the game, but Gold Coast, very, very strong win there. They put the pressure on, much like Western Bulldogs, and they get the win on the board against a very determined Melbourne side in this one. So our final scores here: Gold Coast 15-14, 104. Melbourne 12-13, 85. Gold Coast winning by 19 points. I think that's a fair 19 points. I think we can say that Melbourne are 3 goals worse than Gold Coast, probably on their best day, and I think they played a pretty good game. So to be 3 goals worse than Gold Coast in Gold Coast on your best day is a pretty fair effort from Melbourne in the end there. Gold Coast, well done on getting the win in this one. My player of the game is going to be one of my old classmates, John Noble. 107 AFL fantasy, 29 touches, 18 kicks, 11 handballs, 6 marks and 4 tackles. Second game on the Saturday, we have Hawthorn versus North Melbourne. This was at University of Tasmania Stadium in Launceston, the traditional, well, not the traditional ground, but the adopted ground of both of these teams in recent memory. North Melbourne moving out recently to make way for the Devils coming in the near future. If that gets through, the Tasmanian government, Hawthorn still staying there for a little while before they do move out for the Devils. But this one was really, really one-sided from the beginning. It was all Hawthorn. They win this one 23-12, 150 to 9-11, 65 winning by 85 points. Not really much to be said about Hawthorn. They do business as business, get that win, get that percentage boost on the board for them as well here over a rather lacklustre and rather disappointing North Melbourne, considering that they put up a great effort the week before against the Blues. So, I'm not really going to touch on this game too much longer. I think that we see the clear golfing class between these two teams. When North has a bad day, Hawthorn has a good day. This is what you're going to end up with. So we'll go straight into my player of the game here, and I'm going to go with, there can only be one winner of this award. It's going to be Jack Gunston, kicking 7 goals, 100 AFL fantasy for that matter as well. 15 touches, 11 kicks, 4 handballs, 4 marks, 1 tackle for Jack Gunston. But more importantly, a big 7-goal night, and shout out as well to Mabior Chol, who kicked 5 for his own record. So 2 Hawthorn players scoring the bag. So realistically, while I do give it to Gunston, Chol also worthy of a mention in this one. Now we go straight into our final game on the Saturday. On the Saturday was the Saturday night game between Collingwood and West Coast. In this game, very, very, very close contest for the first 3 quarters. West Coast hanging in there and showing probably one of their better performances of the last 3 or 4 years against the runaway top of the table side in Collingwood. Do I think Collingwood left the gas down a little bit? No, I think that West Coast were really on in the opening 2.5 quarters of this game, and then the back end of the third quarter as well. So well done to West Coast on this one. They do lose to Collingwood by 29 points, but realistically the game was a lot closer than that until Collingwood just hit that premiership mode in the back end of the final term. So final scores here: Collingwood 13-10, 88, West Coast 8-11, 59. Well played by West Coast, well played by Collingwood, keeping West Coast at bay, knowing that they are the better side, and even if they did have an off day, that they were able to maintain their position and show why they are one of the teams who are contending for a premiership this year. So Pies, little early scare from West Coast, very well played game from West Coast in this one, but Pies winning by 5 goals will go straight into my player of the match. So I'm going to go with Scott Pendlebury. 118 AFL fantasy points for Pendles. 1 goal, 28 touches, 17 kicks, 11 handballs, 4 marks and 6 tackles for the Collingwood and AFL legend. Going into the Sunday games, we start at the MCG with Richmond versus Adelaide, and this game was very much one-sided, so I'm not going to touch on it too much for too long, but there is a story coming out of this one that I will update you on as well. So final scores here were Richmond 86-54, Adelaide 18-14, 122. Richmond really, really poor side on the day. Adelaide much better, much improved side this week from Adelaide's perspective. Playing a really clean brand of footy that they show when they are on that top form. They get the job done. 18-14 still a little bit of lackluster goal kicking. They get the job done over a very, very porous Richmond side. The real story out of this one was Tom Lynch throwing the punch at Jordan Butts. And he, as of this moment, as of this recording, has been suspended for 5 games. Obviously, he has the right to appeal, but at this point, it looks like that'll only come down a couple of weeks to maybe 3 games if he's lucky. So this was a very, very bad week for Richmond. I think they're going to lose Tom Lynch for, 5 weeks at least. I think that 5 weeks is going to hold up, and I think that while he's gone off the field for 5 weeks, I think they're going to struggle a lot in the back end of the season. Adelaide just keep going. They're solidifying a top 4 chance here. So big win for the Crows. They get the job done here. We'll go to my player of the game here. It's going to be for Adelaide, and it will be, I'm going to take an outsider on this one. I'm going to take Wayne Malera. We had 111 AFL fantasy, 27 touches, 20 kicks, 7 handballs, 11 marks, and 1 tackle. So well done to Wayne Malera on that effort. But now we're going to move straight to our final game of round 16. It was in Perth at Optus Stadium between Fremantle and St Kilda, and very, very even match through the whole of the game. Scoreline up and down all game. Freo looked to build a lead. St Kilda would come back into the contest. St Kilda would build a lead. It looked like it was going the way of the Saints come the end of the third quarter and the start of the last, but Fremantle managed to peg them back and get the win by 12 points in this one. Final scores here: Fremantle 11-15, 81. St Kilda 9-15, 69. So 2 goals separate these teams, 2 scoring shots separate these teams. St Kilda had a lot of posters in this game as well. So if St Kilda had been able to put some more goals through instead of hitting the post on those scoring chances, they would have been in a much more comfortable position. Unfortunately, it doesn't end up that way, and it goes for a win in favour of the Fremantle Dockers, who again are a team playing for the finals this year. And St Kilda, I think their season's all but over. They're on 5 wins, 86%. One of their better performances in the last recent while. Their season's done at this point. I think they're just going to be consolidating for the draft and looking to see who they can bring in or who they can take out. Big names on the board for them as they're looking at the moment in the free agency space and in the draft space as well. But Alex Taru doing really, really well there as well, so a big shout out to him for his performance. As always, one of my favourite players in the league is Nasiah Wanganeen-Malera, who has been playing excellently of rate and getting the rave reviews he deserves, even with St Kilda falling well behind the standards that some of those players are able to set. They're a team who are much like Carlton, a little lost, I think. They just don't know what their direction is. Are they up? Are they down? Are they in there? Are they out? Decisions have to be made. I think that if I was St Kilda, I'd be genuinely looking at Ross Lyon's position and saying, well, we've been going backwards the last couple of years, so we did have injuries in the start of the year, and when you start the year with injuries, you're not able to really recover as more players come off the board. But still, 5 wins for a team with a lot of quality on the board just isn't good enough. But we go to my player of the game nonetheless, and we go to Fremantle. We go to Luke Jackson, who played a really pivotal role in this game. We go 107 AFL fantasy, 2 goals, 15 touches, 6 kicks, 9 handballs, 4 marks, 8 tackles, 16 hitouts. He was playing a reserve ruck role today with Sean Darcy, the lead ruck for the Dockers, but Luke Jackson getting involved and on the board and doing his bit for the Dockers gets him the player of the game in this one. Now it's time to look ahead to round 17. I can't believe we are at round 17 already of the season. Thursday night is North Melbourne versus Western Bulldogs. I think this one will go the way of Western Bulldogs, I think, quite comfortably as well. I think North are a little lost at the moment, so this one will go the way of the Doggies. Here, I'll give a margin. I'll say Doggies by 65 points in this one. Friday night, Carlton versus Collingwood. I think Carlton need the response. I just don't think it happens. I think the Pies take this one. 2 Friday games. We've got a late game in the West. It's West Coast versus GWS. I think West Coast are looking quite strong. I think they could edge GWS here. I'm going to take a risk and say West Coast to edge GWS in this one here in West Australia. Saturday, we have Essendon and Gold Coast. I think this one, for all rights, does go the way of Gold Coast. So Gold Coast take that one. Then we go down to Geelong vs Richmond without Tom Lynch, without form. Geelong cruise in, get the win there. Brisbane versus Port Adelaide. Is at the Gabba again, much like, as I said, with some of the other games. I think there's one clear favourite in this one that is going to hold, and that's going to be Brisbane beating Port Adelaide at the Gabba. Then Saturday night, the other Saturday night game, we have St Kilda versus Hawthorn. I think this one, again, Hawthorn are really in form at the moment, so they will go and do a number on St Kilda. Go to Sunday, we start with a game between Sydney and Fremantle, where I think Sydney are going to be beaten. They're going to be beaten by an informed Doggers side. They've won 6 on the trot. Why not go out to Sydney, make it 7 against the Swans team, who haven't really shown what they're capable of this year. And then finally, we have Adelaide and Melbourne. And this is one where, again, much like most of the games this week, if not all the games this week, I think there's one clear favourite, and it is Adelaide. So Crows will win that one against the Demons to close out round 17.